Yeah. All right, ready? All right.
That help you sync audio?
Yeah, that's rookie editor here. Welcome back to another podcast, episode number 8, and got Jake sitting across from me today. Easton's busy. I think he was actually heading down to do some food plot stuff tonight. So Jake and I are going to talk all things turkey hunting. Before we get started, though, just wanted to remind you guys, if you're getting ready for deer season, getting minerals out or whatever, we have a code we can share with you guys on Redmond Trophy Rocks website. It's Venari 20, capital V, Venari 20. Save you guys a little bit of dough if you're getting trophy rock, mineral blocks. They got all kinds of cool stuff on there anymore. And as soon as turkey season wraps up, we'll probably get the trail cameras out and start figuring out what deer we might have to hunt this year. So it's an exciting time of year because my favorite time of year, turkey season, and then that transitions right into velvet and all the other fun stuff.
It's hard to believe it's already that time of year.
Man, I know.
Like, where did the first 5 months of the year go?
I was just thinking back, and probably a good starting point, like Eli's youth hunt seems like it was 4 years ago.
It does seem like that, but it was a month ago? 30 days?
Like a month ago. Yeah, like probably almost to the day. And that's what Dad and I were talking about when we were out west this past week, is like, man, that seems like so long ago that we were like getting ready for that, and me driving out to meet you guys, and like it's just weird how quick it goes, but also like how long ago that feels.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're going to cover just turkey stuff, kind of see where that conversation takes us. This year started off different than ever for us because we got to take Eli. So for the listeners, if you guys don't know, Eli's Jake's son, my nephew, and 7, right?
Yeah.
He's 7.
7.
Took him out for youth season for the first time, and that was so fun.
It was. I relive that almost daily.
People always talk about, like getting someone their first turkey, whatever, and I guess for the most part, I guess entirely in our lives so far, that has happened to us with other people, but it's all been adults or people our same age, right?
Yeah,
like we've never taken a kid, have we?
Well, our sister, we got her first turkey, but
we were kind of kids too.
Yeah, she was what? How old was she? Like 10, 11?
Probably older than that, maybe 12.
A 7-year-old is a different story. And then we had another youth hunter who was 17 at the time.
Yeah. So I guess some, but not like a kid.
No.
Yeah, he was as green as it gets.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably count the number of times that he's shot a shotgun on both your hands.
Yeah. And every other time is just practice.
Yeah.
Which I thought he did exceptionally well. I don't know. Each passing year, I get more like weary of guns, which I feel like it'd be different. I feel like I'd be like, not that I'm not comfortable with them, but when it comes to just other people, there's so many freak accidents that happen. And with a kid, just naturally, I'm like honed in, like, and he did, I thought, exceptionally well, which is kudos to you, obviously. But was there anything like, as far as introducing him to turkey hunting, that you would like do differently, or anything that you like strategically thought about to make sure that you did, that you think is like what everyone should be considering?
Well, I mean, this is true in all aspects of parenting. You've got to know your kid. Each child's different. So, I mean, we have 5 kids, and just difference in personalities and temperaments. I don't think that I would treat, there may be one other child of ours that I would treat the way I treated Eli. He's just high energy. He can't hardly sit still. And so I had the desire to want to take him out earlier, but there's no way he could have sat still. He would not have been ready for it. That was even a little bit challenging this year, but he was able to keep his composure. And I think you have to pay attention to your kid, what their temperament is like, what their interests actually are. Don't force it on them. Eli always enjoyed hunting, and I had asked him since he was 4 if he wanted to go and start trying to shoot a crossbow or a shotgun. And he was like, nah, I don't really want to. Well, you gotta take your kid at his word when he says that. So that'd be my advice, would be to just treat each kid differently, because they are different. They're going to require different things. You're going to need to expose them to the outdoors differently in each circumstance. And I don't think I would have done anything different with Eli, because I played it safe. I didn't force him to do it when he was too young. Before he was ready, he actually gets to think back about that. There are times where I'll be tucking him to bed and he'll talk about that hunt, and he's replaying it in his mind, reliving it over again and cherishing that memory, where maybe a 3 or 4-year-old, some might be able to do that, but I don't think Eli would have at 3. So I don't think I would change anything about it.
It's crazy to hear you say a 3 or 4-year-old. Some people listening to this would probably be like, what 3 or 4-year-old is hunting? But like,
there's a lot
out
of them
there. Yeah, they are absolutely out there.
Yeah.
I've seen multiple 4-year-olds shooting their first turkey, which is just I mean, like Eli seemed young, not too young to do it, but he seemed really young.
I mean, even as a 7-year-old boy, he's not a small kid. You know, it's not like he's tiny for his age. But even with a youth model 410, he could hardly reach the trigger on that gun. So for someone to do that with a 3 or a 4-year-old kid, it's like,
yeah,
what compromises are you making in that ground plan in order to get him to be able to pull that trigger?
Yeah, if there's not video proof, I'd be questioning who actually pulled the trigger. But yeah, that
doesn't mean it can't be done.
Sure.
But I certainly wasn't comfortable taking him at that age.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. And I think it was good, too. We took him out last year and kind of got our teeth kicked in, which I think is good. You know,
Yeah.
This year went pretty smooth and was a great hunt, and we heard and saw a lot of turkeys, which is also good. You know, you can't – there's like a fine line there where, yeah, you want it to be tough on them, but you also don't want it to be so tough for so long that they lose interest, but you don't want it to come super easy. So I think it was cool, too, that he had a full season's worth of – he had a miss last year.
Yep.
You know, we got –
Well, and he got to experience
spooked those ones.
Hunting in the timber, sitting still and trying to be with minimal cover because we were in pines at that time. So minimal cover, having to sit still and negotiate the gun on a rest and things like that. And then when he missed, we were actually belly crawling up to these turkeys and shot down over a hill. It probably worked out for the best because, like you said, he got to experience the difficulties of hunting. It wasn't easy his first time. And so now I think he's really hooked because he got to feel the letdown of not succeeding and then a year later get redemption for that. But I forgot to tell him where to hold the red dot on that gun. And so he shot above the turkey because he put it right on its forehead instead of down at the base of their neck. So, yeah, I don't think I would do anything different. I think he's going to be ready to do it from here on out every season.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, people asked me leading up to it, like, how do I think he would react afterwards? I didn't really know. I could have seen it going either way, but his reaction was like, as if you could draw up like how you hope it would be.
Oh, yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
Like appreciative,
Yep.
like super excited, couldn't stop smiling, like exactly what you'd hope.
Well, and he's at the age now too where we're starting. We want our kids to be somewhat self-sufficient. So he like knows how to scramble eggs. He knows how to make his own hot chocolate. He knows how to brew coffee. And now he knows how to take turkey and cut it up so that we can fry it in a skillet. I don't want him to get super close to that because frying scrambled eggs is a little different than frying something that's got like bubbling oil in it.
I just burned myself tonight making wild turkey.
He appreciated the meal that came from harvesting that turkey, which I don't know that many 3 or 4-year-olds can register that sense of appreciation that
there's
he had.
Adults that can't register that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That it completely goes over their head. So that's a cool aspect.
And overall too, he was. Should we talk about how he got that hunt? Because it was actually at an outfitter. We don't do a lot of outfit hunts. I mean, we've never done that.
None. Yeah.
So this is our first experience doing it. But we went to it was a charity banquet, and they had a bunch of like raffle prizes, and you could buy tickets and stuff. And we're just kind of stingy about that stuff, so we don't spend a ton of money to go and try to win every gun that's raffled off or whatever. So he walked away with a couple small prizes, and at the end, the big prize was this guided turkey hunt for a youth hunter, and another boy won it, who was probably 12 or 13, and he's already killed like 4 or 5 turkeys, and he just picked my son out of the crowd and said, I want to donate my guided turkey hunt to you. And so Eli got to experience the gift of that charity, and I think now he'll be more able to allow us to split our time with our other kids or with other youth hunters in the future because he got to feel the charity up front of being given that hunt instead of it being something we paid for or something he won on his own. So there's all kinds of cool stuff that's tied into that hunt, but overall it was a great experience.
I had either not known that or forgot about that, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome, actually. Yeah, and that, like you said, the whole outfitter thing, I have mixed feelings about, but for that specific situation, that was like perfect. It was actually, I told somebody like, it's not very often something like that meets my expectations.
Oh, yeah.
Usually you're let down, and so I just go into it expecting like, we're gonna have what I guess I don't know because I've never been to an outfitter, but like I expected like we're gonna have a guide that thinks he knows what he's talking about but doesn't really know the first thing, sits every single time on a field edge with a decoy and doesn't know the first thing about turkey hunting. And
The
it's
word
going to
that-
be miserable. And it wasn't at all. The guy that we had was awesome, super down to earth, very friendly, great turkey caller, seemed like he knew what he was talking about. The property was immaculate. The place we stayed was immaculate. Like, it was a awesome experience.
Yeah, I expected mediocrity. I expected, like a guy that's 50% and a guide service that's 50% and lodging that's 50%, which isn't terrible. I mean, a lot of hunters get by on 50%, of their expectations, but this one did. It was a really good experience overall. We got to meet some great people, which always adds to the flavor of the hunt too. So
yeah, there was other kids there too. Like, it was a really good experience.
And for my first turkey hunt, I was already in college. So I think I was in my 20s when I killed my first bird. And just times were different. That was like 15 years ago, not that long ago, but times were different. And it hasn't been too often that we've gotten to experience like the hunt camp atmosphere, because usually it's just the two of us or it's just a couple buddies or something like that. Eli got to experience with total strangers the joy of seeing other turkeys get brought into camp. And so I think overall I wouldn't have wanted it to happen any other way.
Yeah, I've told multiple people, and I've been trying to be more open to having my mind changed about things if it can be influenced in a positive way, or if somebody can present information to me that challenges the way I'm thinking. And like, based on that situation and that scenario as a whole, like, I would do that again. I would absolutely do that again. That was just a great experience. It was kind of cool too and eye-opening, because like, I've realized when it comes to like turkey numbers and our opinions on them, you're very much like, your opinion is kind of biased based on where you live. Like,
Absolutely.
You just spend your most time here. You have observed probably the most land and properties, and that's just what you think of. You kind of get in this like tunnel of like, this is what it's like everywhere.
Yep.
Man, the turkey numbers were fantastic in that area. Even just driving around, like when I left that morning, like I saw a bunch of turkeys, like
just wildlife in general. We saw a bunch of deer on the way in and on the way out, turkeys everywhere. It just seemed like that area was just teeming with game.
Yeah, which we'll probably segue into here in a little bit, maybe right now, but yeah, I've been kind of like doom and gloom when it comes to turkeys lately everywhere, but it just gave me a newfound appreciation for, like, just because they're bad here, which stinks that it's bad here, doesn't mean it's like that everywhere. And there's still great turkey hunting to be had. You just may have to put a little more work in or whatever.
Yep.
But I was dropping pins left and right on my way out of there. Like, man, this if it keeps going the way it's going around home, like, I wouldn't be afraid to drive out that way.
There's a lot more public out there too. Around here, you got to drive an hour just to get another 100 acres of public ground, and out there's a couple thousand acres. So.
Yeah, I don't understand why that's my biggest holdup, is like, I still just don't understand why it is different. Like, I guess the habitat and terrain was a little bit different. It was more like pasture ground and rolling hills.
Yeah,
but
it was way less commercial ag from a row crop perspective. There's a lot more cattle. I mean, that's what we were hunting on, was a big cattle operation.
You think less people living out there?
Absolutely. We happen to live in an area where there's a crossroads of two major interstates, and we're 50 minutes from one major city to the north and 50 minutes from one major city to the south, and you got the urban sprawl, and so everybody around here is hunting their back 40. And out there, people hunt their back 40 too, but there's also farmers that have, like, that particular owner that the ground was leased from owned, not the cattle farmer owned 12,000 acres. That doesn't happen around here. No. There's not 12,000 acres to be had.
Yeah, that's nuts.
12,000 acres around here has, 14,000 people on it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the guide was telling me how he's like, oh, it's not that hard to get permission out here. I'm like, dude, it is impossible by us to get permission anywhere.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's not that big of a deal. So it's just crazy. Once again, you point your truck in any direction and it may be a completely different world, even within your state lines.
Could be.
Yeah. I guess if we want to get into that, I had mentioned to you before we started recording here, the last, I guess really 5 to 8 years, it's just seemed like turkey numbers I mean, more than just here, because even on some of my travels, like places I've hunted for the last 5 or 6 years, like it's different. You're definitely not hearing as many turkeys as you once did.
Sure.
And I guess that's not proof that there's less turkeys, but it's proof that you're hearing less, which in turn you would say there's less turkeys.
If nothing else, is proof that your experience is declining over time.
Right. But yeah, I had a very in-depth, challenging conversation with a gentleman yesterday, and it did indeed challenge my thinking a little bit. It kind of all spurred from, I got a harvest survey from one of the states that I hunt, and which I think those are just random. I don't think everybody gets them, but anyway, this one, and I don't remember it being like this in years past, almost every question was geared towards like your experience and potentially reducing the bag limit next year. Like one of the questions that stands out to me was like, would you rather be able, because right now you can harvest 2 turkeys there.
Okay.
And it was like, obviously worded much more professionally probably, but like, would you rather still be able to harvest 2 turkeys next season and potentially not hear the gobbling activity that you might if we were to reduce it to just 1? Or would you rather have us reduce it to just 1 and hear more gobbling activity? And so I put that up.
Assuming that's a 1-for-1.
Exactly.
Which is really hard to say.
It is. And that's kind of, I guess, where this ends up going is it's really hard to say that is going to be the result. There's no proof or facts that will be the result. But anyway, I put that up as a poll on our Instagram, and we got really good participation in it. I think 60 people voted for reduce the bag limit to 1 and hear more gobbling. And 3 people, so 60 to 3, said keep it at a two bird limit and less gobbling. And I mean, just to come right out and say it, I without hesitation voted for reduce the bag limit. I mean, we've lived our whole life, like even in Ohio, you know, as long as I can remember, it was 2 turkeys until like 3 or 4 years ago they changed it to 1. But we would never, I think I've shot 2 turkeys in Ohio once in my entire life. Like, we would never pursue another turkey. We got our 1, and, like, that was it. That's just the way we've always been. But what was interesting is in this conversation, the gentleman, again, posted up some pretty good stuff and backed it with facts. He mentioned that in this state, 75% of people only shoot 1 turkey. Only 25% of people shoot 2. So, really, it's, you know, not that many people are shooting 2 anyway. My mind still at that time was like, okay, but even so, just 25%, that's gonna be more turkeys. And his argument was basically like, how do you know?
Yeah, there's too many other factors to be able to say that. But the devil's advocate side of that is, if you leave 25%, and that's such a small number of hunters that are actually harvesting 2 turkeys, how do you know that that's not going to affect the population negatively as well? There's just too many other variables. So that's what's always been, to me, it's always been extremely challenging to understand how a given DNR agency goes about monitoring things like the waterfowl population or the turkey habitat or population or the antlered versus antlerless population of deer in their state. Because it's not like they're going out and surveying and taking tallies on a sheet, you know. They have to use their best educated guess. And that could very well be the best mechanism they have for measuring those things, is an educated guess based on historical data about how many deer can survive in a given square acreage of habitat or something like that. This is all just hypothetical. I'm not a DNR agent. I don't know these things. Plus factoring in car accidents and hunter numbers, harvest numbers, things like that. There's got to be some way that they calculate how they can estimate what a population in their state can handle in terms of hunting pressure. But that calculation can't factor in all of the other environmental things that go on that could impact a population like that, especially for turkeys, with all of the additional like in Ohio, the number of predators that actually come after deer, you can pretty much limit it to us and coyotes. But for a turkey, that number quadruples in terms of the things that can impact them. And if a doe has twins, one fawn might get killed If a turkey lays a nest and has 13 eggs in it, one predator could come in and wipe out that entire generation of poults from that hen. So I don't know. I think those numbers are cool to bring up because it might tame some of our resistance to what we consider overhunting, but it still doesn't cover all the bases. And
Sure.
I don't think that's anything that humans will ever be able to do. We just don't have the measuring mechanisms to do that.
Right. I guess the whole reason I even brought that conversation up, and there's some more to it that we'll get into, but the whole reason I even brought it up is it got me thinking. It's like, see how I want to say this. I saw there was like a therapist or a doctor, somebody on Rogan who talked about once, like people with depression. A lot of times their depression gets so much worse because they like dwell in it. Like they obsess over it so much that it just, not discrediting that someone does or doesn't have depression, but like they obsess over it so much that it makes it worse.
Yep.
I was like, have I been so obsessed over the wild? Not just me, but like we're doing it through social media as a whole. It's this huge trendy thing about the wild turkey decline and how bleak it is and how terrible it is. Whatever. Is it not as bad as we think it is? Like him bringing that up to me just made my brain start churning. I'm like, maybe it's not as bad as we think it is. But the flip side of that coin is, and I think kind of where he was coming from is he talks to a lot of people that want to point the finger and they maybe don't have the experience or they're remembering the good old days differently than they actually were. I know we're not. Like I can use straight facts and data of like, okay, this property we've hunted for 15 years and there used to be 8 gobbling turkeys on it in the spring and now there are 0. Yeah. That's not us remembering it wrong. Like that 100% is a fact happened, and there's a lot of those instances.
Especially because in those cases, that's an anecdote because you're talking about one property, but you can remove things like, well, the habitat changed, because we know that it's not. In 8 years, it's not like the trees grew too big for the turkeys to fly up into, or the woods was logged. Those things didn't happen. So those factors you can remove, which helps to make your case a little stronger, I think.
Yeah, and then people bring in but there's so many more nest predators, and I don't think there is. And there's been some studies from like Mike Chamberlain and some other guys about how trapping really doesn't do a whole lot anyway unless it's done like on a large scale for years and years and years.
Yep.
But there's also the aspect, and I feel like I know a lot about trapping. Like the fur boom was back in like the 80s. So like guys are like, no one traps anymore. People haven't been trapping forever.
Yeah. Like
that was a long time ago. It's
yeah,
not
that's
like
the 80s or 50 years ago.
Yeah, when people are like, oh, well, there's just nobody's trapping anymore. Like nobody's been trapping anymore for like 40 years. Mm-hmm. Like this whole decline, if we're going to talk about that, like that's a more recent thing. So to correlate that to predators, a lot of people I feel like message us and talk to me about the predator thing because I trap, and I like don't necessarily agree with them. Now I think it's not going to hurt, right, if you remove coyotes and coons and possums or whatever, but like I don't know that it's having that big of an impact just because it's not like we stopped trapping 5 years ago. Like people haven't been trapping forever.
And at the end of the day, too, it's not like you stop trapping and the coons are going to run wild. Nature has, the good Lord gave Mother Nature the ability to regulate population overreach by things like disease. Like a good example is the property that we live at. I've trapped a ton of coons off of it, and I laid off for the past several years. The coons can repopulate an area pretty quickly. This year I've killed 3 that I know had some sort of disease, and I have to believe that it's because I laid off of the trapping. They're repopulating now. They're in closer proximity to each other, which allows the spread of communicable diseases to be more readily available to them, and I think that's probably part of the reason.
Why do you think they had diseases? Just the behavior?
Well, I mean, one of the arguments that I've heard about things like CWD or chronic wasting or the disease called blue tongue for deer, the reason why that happens is because the deer are overpopulated and are living in such close proximity that the virulence of that pathogen is up, which allows it to spread more easily and mutate more readily in order to do whatever it's going to do in the population. Same thing happens. One of the reasons people don't know this about the cold and flu season, the cold and flu exists in the summertime. It's not like cold weather makes a cold happen. The reason we get colds in the wintertime is because everyone's shut up indoors. You're in closer proximity to more people. And so that pathogen is more readily transferable from person to person, which makes the disease prominence in humans in those months higher. The same thing happens in nature for animals. So if there are too many coons, Mother Nature is going to do something to regulate that population to something that it can sustain. We have this grandiose idea in our head, I think, because of organizations like PETA and things like that don't want anything to die ever unless it's us. Mother Nature can't control things, and that population is just going to run wild. If you don't trap raccoons on your property, eventually every tree is going to be demolished because the raccoons are going to take it over. It's like, that's not the way it works. It doesn't work. It's never worked that way.
Which you could kind of tie into this is a widely talked about thing, but like maybe the turkey numbers we're hoping for or we were used to was like the boom.
We're inflated.
And this is what Mother Nature and its surrounding habitat can sustain here, at least.
Sure.
Know? And that may be it may be that simple. It may be that simple that like what's happening right now is what it should be, and this is what we should be used to, and this is how it'll stay.
Here's the other thing that I would bring into the conversation is think about climate change. When we hear people talk about climate change, they're talking about measurable differences in things like water temperature in the oceans and in lakes, the ice cap receding and things like that, temperatures that they can measure year over year, and they're talking about that within the last 250 years. Sometimes they're talking about it within the last 50 years. 50 years ago, it wasn't as hot. Well, does the Earth flatline? Like, no, it's a roller coaster. It's always changing. So we may just be existing inside of that fluctuation, that if they measured over the course of 1,000 years, it would be no big deal at all. But because they've shrunk the timeline to 50 years, they can drum up all this panic and make people think, oh my gosh, the world's 10 degrees warmer in the last 50 years. When in reality, 50 years before that, it was 10 degrees cooler because things ebb and flow. And so it's quite possible that we are just in a valley in the turkey population and that it'll come back up, which I think there's some evidence for, and it'll hit a peak again, and then eventually it'll tail back off.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to know. And in that guy's favor, it's really hard to point the finger in any one direction and claim that that's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, he's too many things to measure.
He said verbatim, and I hope he doesn't think I'm trying to steal his thunder if he listens to this, but like basically what you just said about the ebb and flow is like that's what turkey hunting has always been, and that's what it'll always be. Like good hatches, bad hatches. I think it's hard. Like I have a very competitive mindset when it comes to this, and I yearn for, what I feel like they could be, and maybe that's unrealistic or a poor way to think about it, but it's hard to think like, oh, it's just, we've had some bad hatches for the last going on decade now. But I think that is a big factor, that the property you killed your turkey on, well, we both killed our turkey on this year. There was like 7 or 9 jakes on it last year, and it was great turkey hunting this spring. So that is a huge element, and maybe it is all just up to Mother Nature. I guess I find a little bit of peace in that thought process of just like, peaks and valleys, good areas, bad areas, whatever, like it'll all be okay. But I guess where we kind of left it was like, and I hadn't really thought about this, and I'm not sure I agree with him in this aspect, but like he was basically like, we got to be careful what we wish for, because the more you allow them to take stuff away from us, eventually we're going to wake up and like, we can't hunt anymore. Like they reduce it to 1. And a lot of states have already done that. There's a lot of states that have reduced it to 1, and his argument was like they'll never raise it back to 2. It's funny that he said that because literally 24 hours later I received an email from the ODNR talking about how they're raising the antlerless harvest on public land back up to 2. Yep. They reduced it to 1 for a few years, and they are bringing it back up to 2 for this season. So I don't know that they couldn't raise it again. It's probably maybe a little more unlikely with turkeys, just because I don't feel like we're going to have some, boom in the population again.
Sure.
But I do see that argument. It's like,
Yeah.
But I guess I'm just of the opinion that, like, whatever the turkey needs, like whatever that resource needs, I'm for. So if it needs a reduction to the bag limit because it seems like there's way more pressure when it comes to turkey hunting, I'm for it. If that's not going to help and it needs to just stay the way that it is and we need to just suck it up, I'm for that too.
Sure.
I don't know what's right.
I don't do a lot of research in this area because my time and energy is spent on other things with 5 kids. If you have children, you know how that works. But I would love to get your thoughts on what direction the research is going. Is most of the research in the turkey sphere right now about how to increase the population? Are there studies going on about how to reduce the population accurately? What do you think?
I don't know. I guess not to my knowledge of how to reduce it, but it seems like everything that's out there from Mike and some of these other guys, it's at least maintaining it.
Okay.
But I guess I haven't truthfully spent a ton of time looking at the research currently. Across the landscape, I don't know. I'm sure it's different everywhere, but
the reason I bring that up,
it seems like most of it is geared towards habitat. He obviously collars turkeys and looks at gobbling activity and their hierarchies and all
Sure.
kinds of stuff. But I don't know how much is actively going on as far as like, hey, how can we increase numbers? That seems to be on more of a localized scale. Just, the private landowners that own tons of ground. My mind's going to like Alabama and some of the big pine plantations down south. Of like those guys are, conducting, I feel like, a lot of their own research with
Sure.
trapping and the TSI stuff that's super trendy and popular right now. Like there's a lot of that going on, but I guess I don't know when it comes to maintaining or increasing the population.
The reason why I brought it up is because in my mind, the way that I would approach trying to study a phenomena like this would be to figure out the right knobs to turn in order to maintain population. Not worry about growth or decline. What does a turkey need? And if we know that over the last decade, a turkey poult has, let's say, of the turkey poults in a given area, 10% of them survive to adulthood. What do we need to do to manipulate the habitat and hunting pressure and disease control and predator control, etc.? What do we need to do to make sure that 10% success rate to adulthood is maintained?
I know.
That's
right
what I would
now, 80%. I guess I don't know if this is. I don't know the region but 80% of nests fail. So 2 out of 10 nests are successful hatching.
Right.
It has
And then
anything
there's
to do
other
with
things.
getting to adulthood, but 8 out of 10. So it's
Sure.
just like you have 10 nests, 8 of them aren't like possums, hawks, snakes.
The reason I bring this
weather,
up, and
whatever.
this goes back to your discussion, which was right now online, it seems like the hunting community is broken into 2 camps. One is hunter numbers are up, though they're telling us they're down. The hunting pressure is increased. Hunting access has decreased. Populations are in decline. Quality of population is in decline, and we need to do something about it. And then the other side is there's nothing wrong with it. I don't see any problem with it. I still want to kill my 2 birds in Ohio, so take it back to 2 birds. When the discussion is being framed that way, there's a story that I remember from back in college. There was a psychology professor who was trying to do research about a theory he had developed during I think it was his dissertation, which is what you have to produce when you're trying to become a doctorate in your field. He had some theory about alcoholism in a given population, and formulated his question and spent like the next 35 years trying to prove that his question was right. And what he really should have done is had the question, did the research maybe 2 or 3 times, and if his question wasn't validated the way he wanted it to, he should have changed the question and continued his research. But instead, what he did is he spent 35 years researching a failed idea. He spent all that time and energy, all that money, trying to prove that he was right because he was too prideful to admit that he could have been wrong. And I think both of the camps online right now are falling into that a little bit. They're falling into what's called confirmation bias, where you lean on your own experience and your own anecdotal understanding to inform everything else that you say or do. And that's not a good way. Like you said, you had an open mind. He changed the way you think about some things. That's how everybody should be. But when we get in these tribes online, it's really hard. People don't do that. And they don't like to do that because it's uncomfortable. Right. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable in the world we live in today.
No, well, that's true. Yeah, I guess you brought it up again with the camps. Like, are we talking about it so much that it's making it more of a problem? Like the access issue. Are we talking about it so much that it's making more people go and buy land, which is making the access problem even more of a problem?
Could be.
I feel like if
or is it making outfitters defensive enough that they go and lease more ground just so they have it in their back pocket?
The same thing with the turkey numbers. Are we talking about it so much that it is? We think it's worse than it actually is. I maybe not, but I'm starting to wonder. It's like that's why I just go back to freaking social media. I feel like it's just ruining everything. Because like, think about it. If none of this stuff was out there to be talked about, discussed, whatever, there's no doubt that a lot of these things would not be as big of an issue as they are.
Yeah.
But
at least there wouldn't be as many people involved in the issues. It doesn't mean the issues wouldn't still be talked about, but we also live in an age in this country where activism is proudly promoted. And I don't think activism has any place at all. Activism is not protesting. Protesting is one thing. Activism is shouting other people down because you think they're wrong.
Yeah.
It's not standing up for what you think is right. And I think what we are seeing in the hunting world is that more and more people are falling into the trap of becoming activists for a given side rather than actually trying to understand the nuance and talk about things in an educated, informed way. They just start jumping into a camp, taking sides, and planting their flag in the ground, screaming like people who take over campuses like Harvard and Yale. That's not what you want to do.
And a lot of it's just regurgitated, hear one thing and then just spit back out the same stuff in their own version. But as far as you brought up the research side of things, I would think, and I don't know this for sure, but I would think when it comes to managing the resource as far as turkeys go, I'm sure it's exactly like deer. I'm sure they're looking at harvest data. Like I know they post that at the end of every week, I think in Ohio, where it is compared to the past however many years.
I think there's a week lag. So they'll, like this coming Friday, they would release not last Friday, but the Friday before's information for that week.
So I'm sure they're looking at that at the end of the season going, oh, we harvested more turkeys this year than last. And instead of considering that you may have more hunters, they probably just say, oh, well, we have more birds. This is great.
Right.
I don't know.
Or maybe we just had really good weather. It wasn't raining. And so opening day, everybody who was out was able to, 80% of people who were out were able to kill one, where a couple years ago we had an opening day and I bet there weren't that many people out.
Could be.
And I'm sure with turkeys, there are probably a lot of people who are not near as diehard as you are in particular, who would maybe say, I'll hunt opening weekend, and if I don't get a bird, I'm just going to hang it up for the year.
Oh, yeah.
So if it's raining during opening weekend, that guy might not be buying a tag,
Yeah, that's a fact. You look at analytics on any of our turkey YouTube videos, it doesn't always seem like it when you're out there because it seems like there's guys everywhere, but as a collective whole, you're absolutely right. There's not as many guys, I think, as gung-ho about it.
No.
Although it doesn't always seem that way. Heck, out west, Dad and I had 8 other guys on our one plane that were going out there to turkey hunt.
Really?
8 other guys just on our plane. And there was trucks everywhere. It was a week. It's not like we were out there on a Saturday and Sunday. It was during the week.
I'm glad there aren't 8 people flying on planes to come and hunt our area.
There might be. They're going to be sorely disappointed if they do. But yeah, those experiences just make me go man, there's no way there's less hunters. There's no way.
Yeah.
But
10 years ago, you might have flown on a plane to go and do that and not thought to ask people about it. That's one of the things that I think social media is doing too, is it's making us, I think we're being more observant in areas that we weren't observant before. Like, oh, that guy's got camouflage on. I wonder what he's doing. It's turkey season.
Yeah.
And then you start talking to people and it's like,
I didn't have to ask. They were just also getting their guns. So it was pretty easy at that point. Yeah. We did end up talking, but yeah, Mississippi, Georgia, and somewhere else. I can't remember.
So maybe Mike Chamberlain's going to listen to this because we've brought research up a couple of times, and I would be
not really. You put me on the spot with it, and I don't know. Yeah.
Well, no, I have another question. I would love to see a research study done because there's been a ton of data collected about humans and our developmental process from infant to adulthood. The changes that we go through, how hormones play into that stuff, where different levels of maturity happen. Like a baby at 2 months old is not really that able to play hide and seek, peekaboo. But at 3 months old, they can. Well, what changes in that 1 month to make them change? You know, a baby can go from rolling over at 6 or 7 months old to walking at 12 months old. And what is that? The brain. What happens in the brain to allow that to happen? Thinking back, we just watched, because a turkey hunt's going to come out here probably shortly, where you'll see this. But I killed a tom, and then we sat back down, and a Jake comes walking through. And my goodness, that Jake is so much less intelligent than the tom. I would love to see a brain study about the maturation process of an adult male turkey to figure out, why is the Jake so much less intelligent? I mean, like, the tom comes walking up the hill, and he's kind of slow, and he's looking around, and he stops and pays attention, and he's only a 2-year-old. And that 1-year-old Jake comes marching right up there and never stops moving at all, and pecks his head around and got way closer. And it's like, I would love to know. I would love to see someone do research about how that maturation process happens in a turkey.
I'm sure there's been something done that I guess maybe not specifically, but I'm sure there's
if you know
something
about
out
it,
there.
If you know about it, put it in the comments, because I would love to read that article.
You would think a lot of it just has to do with experience. Like, you know, the toms live 365 days longer. Like, they've probably experienced a run-in with a predator, or maybe calling before, or whatever. Like, I'm sure there's more to it than just that. But
then
I think
that would
plays
lead
a part in it.
That would lead me to believe that there would also be a difference between a 2 and a 3-year-old turkey. And I don't think there is that big of a difference between a 2 and even a 4 or a 5-year-old tom.
Well, I know there's research out there that talks about it being like nearly impossible, maybe even impossible to even know if it's a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5-year-old turkey.
That's true.
I know Mike said that a 2-year-old turkey could have giant hooks, and a 5-year-old turkey could have whatever, you know,
I've heard that before
spurs.
too.
So
terrain and nutrition, all that stuff can play into it.
Yeah,
sure.
and I'm sure it's probably regional too. I know, like, you know, they say hunting Easterns is, you know, they're a smarter, tougher turkey than the Western Merriams.
Which is so funny, because out west, especially like where you guys were at, they've got to endure some pretty harsh winters. You think that they would need to be more hardy.
The whole first week of our trip out there, I was like, my first Merriam's experience is the complete and total opposite of what everyone says it's supposed to be. They were the toughest turkeys I've ever hunted. Like, not gobbling. The few, you know, you'd get on that would gobble, would hang up, and had, you know, oh, those Merriam turkeys, you know, they won't have a bunch of hens this time of year. Every turkey we got on had like half a dozen or more hens.
Isn't that crazy?
The one we chased for like 2 days in a row, he had 9 hens. It's like, you know, May 10th. So it just goes to show you that, you know,
you flip
whatever, there is no rules, you know, whatever people say, that can happen,
Right.
but there's no rules when it comes to wild critters, which is why they're so fun to chase. But
I want to know how the Native Americans hunted wild turkeys.
Gosh.
With their stick bows, like,
I guess,
and no camouflage, no leafy suits.
Who knows?
Did they even hunt wild turkeys?
Have they evolved since then, and they weren't that hard to kill, and now they are?
I don't know.
Who knows? But yeah, it's interesting. It's fun chasing them in different places. You, I guess, learn a lot more about them as a whole, and I don't know. I just feel like different situations in different terrain prepares you for different situations in different terrain.
Yeah,
you find yourself like, I've been in a similar situation, even though that was Ohio. Like, I know I used a lot of tactics we've used here out there. Like, I even 2 years ago crawled on a turkey while Easton kept it gobbling, and like we did that same thing out there. It's like, you know, you can apply a lot of the same things everywhere you go.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. It's been a fun season. You only got out though
a handful of times.
Yeah, a few times.
That's okay.
Yeah, which is funny too. I had a post drafted up. I mainly didn't post it because it was too long to post. But it's so funny how, like, I don't know. I guess became more aware of it this year. But like every turkey hunt, I sit down. I try to do it with deer hunting too, but I just love turkey hunting so much more. And like, I like to say a little prayer. And like, thank you for letting me be here again. No matter what my health is, just I'm here. Help me to soak it in, be where my feet are, like all that stuff. And this year I had 2 like textbook, I don't want to say easy, but just textbook turkey hunts in 2 different states. Like, just went just like you'd hope they would go. And so I just wanted something a little bit different. And I like remember sitting there and saying like, my normal prayer. And then I was also like, make this one a little bit harder. Like, give me something different. And man, that thing just whooped us for like 4 or 5 days. Like,
your home state bird?
Yeah, he hardly gobbled. That's the first time. I mean, it's funny how we've hunted that same property for like 5 or 6 years now, and they always do the same thing. And the one time I sit there and say a little prayer about make it harder, I mean, these things roosted in spots we've never, ever one time heard them roost, ever. Yep. They never roosted in the same place twice.
Yep.
It's just, I don't know, I've been thinking a ton about that because I was like, I literally prayed for this. I asked for this, yeah. And they would, you ask and you shall receive. He was just like, here you go.
Yeah.
This is going to be tough. And it worked out, in the end, obviously. But that was challenging too, is like, I don't know, people talk about it, but I don't know that I can say I experienced it until for sure this season. I mean, in years past, but like, there was a part of me that like didn't know if I wanted to shoot that turkey. Like,
I knew when I was filming him come in, I knew you were debating in your head.
Even after it happened, like, I'll just be super open and transparent here, and some people are probably going to be like, that's ridiculous to say, but like, part of me is, I don't want to say I regretted it, but I was just like, man, like, we spent 4 or 5 days together, getting up every morning, the anticipation, looking at maps. I'm, laying in bed at night thinking about, what is he going to do? What
conversations and strategy about what to do. Yeah.
And like, the older I get, the more I realize how much I love that aspect of it. And then when you pull the trigger, it's just over. And like, it's just, you're just done. And he's gone. He won't gobble ever again. You'll go, if you want to go in there the next morning, you will not hear him. And it's just like, I don't know why that one really, not to get like spiritual, but like, I was like, man, when I prayed for this one to be harder, he made the hunt harder, but was he actually making me think about this? Because like, that was like way harder. Like, I was like, why, what is happening? Should I not hunt them anymore? Should I just take pictures of them? Like, I don't know. It was just weird. Because like, at the end of the day, you're there to kill them. Like, let's just call it what it is. Like, you're there, you're going to load your gun. Like, you're there to kill them.
Sure.
But yeah, I was like, is that going to get worse next year? Is it gonna, am I gonna
only if you pray for it again?
Yeah, purposely not load my gun and just be like, oh, sorry, Jake.
Yeah.
It's just weird. I don't know.
I don't start loading blanks.
Yeah. I can't say I've ever thought about that with like deer. And I think maybe it's just because it seems like there's not as many of them around anymore. Maybe.
Turkeys?
So yeah,
turkeys around?
Because I can't say I felt that in some of my other travels, but like, at the end of the day, like I said, you I guess where my mind at it with this is like, you feel that way about it, but the other side of the coin is like, I'm also a hunter. Like, I want to be successful. Like, I want to have that experience, and you also don't know when your last experience is. So it's like, do you want to not, get that feeling? I don't know. I mean, I'm more thinking out loud here just because I'm like, what's going on?
Well, this is what the analogy that I would use to describe, I think, what you're feeling, because I've felt that way numerous times about many different things, is imagine, you choose the college that you're going to go to, and you're studying real hard, you're in the degree field where you want to get a job someday, you're doing everything right, you're on the path. And then you graduate, and that job isn't open, and so you have to get a job at Starbucks. It's like, graduating and getting the diploma and the job was the goal, but that wasn't the sanctifying process. The sanctifying process was getting to achieve the goal. Now that you've achieved the goal, because that job isn't materializing for you the way you always hoped that it would, and you have to get an hourly wage job working in retail somewhere, if that's the case, now you're back at the bottom. The sanctification process, which is a process of growth and maturation, happens when you're chasing that bird. And then you pull the trigger and you kill him and you achieve the goal, and now you're at the bottom because that bird's not there anymore. And there's a new challenge waiting for you to provide you with the opportunity for more growth and more maturation. That's just part of the layers of life.
Yeah. It really is the process. Like, that I've just become obsessed with. And I think it's good for me to realize that that's what I love, because I think maybe there's not as much stress around the actual like achievement aspect of it, because when I was younger, it used to just be all about like checking the box basically. Sure. And now I try to like really live in everything else, because I know like I'm living in right now what I know I'm going to look back on and appreciate and realize that that's what I cared most about. But
sure, yeah, I mean that's like I said, that's a sign of growth and maturation as a hunter and as a person. The journey is the thing that's most satisfying. It doesn't matter what the goal is. What you're doing is now you're training yourself to recognize that the struggle uphill matters more than getting to the top of the hill. And that's a good way to be strong in life in general.
Yeah,
I suppose if you were going to talk to somebody who isn't like that, the word to describe those people is a hedonist, which is someone who is only after self-gratification in the moment. And that's not a good way to exist long term. You end up being 45 years old, single on a boat somewhere, trying to pick up 18-year-old girls. That's not what you want to do,
Yeah.
So you've got to enjoy the journey. The process is the thing that actually matters the most.
Yeah. Something that I also drew like a parallel to, and this is probably this may even be an insult to some people. I hope it's not, but I'm struggling to articulate things today, it seems. But like, I was listening to Sean Ryan, and he had a veteran on his podcast, and the vet was talking about how when he left the service or whatever, or he was no longer deployed and came back to reality, he got messed up into drugs and all kinds of crazy stuff. And he was like, I realize now that it was me trying to match the dopamine rush I got from killing people, like from combat. And so he's like, I would go to these crazy exotic cities overseas that were like known for like being some of the most dangerous places in the world on purpose, knowingly that I was going to be in so much danger, because I wanted it. Like I wanted that rush. And I was like, not to try to relate turkey hunting to that, because that's super honorable and something completely different. But I was like, I feel like in a way that's kind of what happens, is like, you have that entire build up in that process, and you harvest that turkey and you have this giant dopamine rush or whatever, and you want it again.
Yeah.
And I think that's why so many guys are traveling to different states, and they've realized that about themselves. Like, and it's not, I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily, but that's probably where I think the struggle is for me, is because like I know that if I remove him, I won't have that hunt or that feeling or that process anymore. But at the same time, I really need and want that feeling also. It's just like it's a weird balance.
What a lot of the military side is because it's a analogy that hits close to home, because most of us never experience life-threatening situations. And so for me to listen to someone talk about things like that, it's like I get to momentarily put myself in their shoes and try to understand their thought process. And it can be dangerous if you're chasing the dopamine rush that comes from harvesting a wild game animal, and you don't recognize that the mission of getting to the harvest moment is actually what matters. So Jocko Willink says all the time when he's talking to veterans, because he is one, and he knows how dangerous it is for people who have had such a clearly defined mission that is very rewarding, especially in terms of the dopamine rush and adrenaline. When they come home and aren't doing that anymore, a lot of guys fall. I mean, that's one of the reasons why suicide rate is so high among our veterans, is because, and drug addiction, alcoholism, all that stuff, is because they come home and they don't have a mission anymore. Because in the military, they weren't actually chasing the high. It was the struggle of the boot camp and all the training to get to that point that actually mattered the most to them. They've got to recognize that when they come home and go back on mission and do something else to reorient that side of their existence. And if they don't, they end up being a hedonist that just chases that dopamine, which leads them to traveling to all these exotic cities looking for a fight, basically.
Yeah.
And the way that translates back into hunting is, if all you ever do is chase the dopamine high of killing things, you're not going to recognize that there's a journey that takes you there that's actually more valuable. And eventually you'll be the guy that breaks a law somewhere and kills a turkey by poaching or something, because you have to have that high.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen to everybody, but that's how the analogy is similar. So
Yeah.
you've got to recognize that the mission of getting to be able to harvest a turkey or a deer or a duck or whatever is actually what matters the most. It's all of the training, because you are training. You're training to sit still and be quiet. You're training to learn how the animal functions, the habitat, all of that stuff, to put you in a position where you can be successful. There's nothing wrong with that. That's exactly the same. That's exactly the same as what someone who explains their military experience would think.
Yeah, I knew exactly where you're going with that, and that's true. It's probably even heightened now because of social media and the pressure that adds. But yeah, I think that makes a lot of people make dangerous mistakes and putting other people or other things in jeopardy just for the sake of filling the tag, posting the picture, or whatever.
I mean, that's why you go and you poach a 250-inch whitetail, you know? Yeah. There's all kinds of examples of that. It's because that guy didn't recognize that the journey of getting to a successful harvest on any game animal is really what matters. He just wanted the harvest.
Yep.
That's not a gratifying way to live your life.
Yeah. I tell you what, though, I've gained some grace for the younger generation of people who screw up and make mistakes with anything, but like I just think back on like some of the decisions I made while hunting, and thankfully, you know, nothing, you know, was ever illegal or too dangerous or anything, but like you realize when you get older that like people are humans, and there's not always, you know, intent or ill intent, but sometimes it just, the situation gets the best of them. And like out west I had 2 turkeys that were basically like stacked on top of each other, and in the state I was in, you could actually kill them both in the same day, both in the same shot if you want, but I had only bought 1 tag. And I would just, in the moment, like really chill and relax and just patient and just like letting them separate. And I thought, like, in the moment of like, man, 10 years ago, Nick, I would have been like, I'm going to try to squeeze something through there or whatever. And like, it's just cool to see like your progression. And that's why, I don't know, when I see younger people, I used to jump down their throats if they're posting something, you know, not as tasteful as I think it should be or whatever. And sometimes it still gets under my skin, but like I try to remember that like maybe they don't know better yet. You know, maybe they haven't had an experience yet that's made them realize, or maybe they haven't had a conversation with someone yet that's challenged their thinking or made them, you know, look at it from a different lens or a different perspective. I think I was telling somebody, I saw, you may have saw this too, but there was a girl on Instagram, I think it was probably everywhere, but on Instagram is where I saw it, who shot a turkey at like 80 or 90 yards, and she was taking this like video of like, you know, just shot this thing 80 yards, babe, you know, 80 yards. And she like pans out there, and there's like 2 or 3 other guys that I'm guessing were boyfriend, husband, friend, whatever, and you know, she got just, I mean, drugged through the coals. People were just, I mean, stomping on this girl.
I could totally see that.
And that was my like initial reaction, but then I was like, man, I just have a feeling that she's probably new to hunting, and those 2 or 3 guys were probably like, do it, you know, oh yeah, you can shoot that far, oh, you know, TSS, whatever, oh yeah, go ahead. And she probably wasn't, I mean, yeah, she did it, but I don't know that she's at fault, and she didn't do anything illegal or wrong as far as I know, you know, there's nothing that says you can't shoot that far. It's just not what I would do. Not what I think you should do, but like, I don't know, there was something in me that was like, man, she's getting really beat up right now, and I don't have any, you know, proof to this, but like, if let's say that was her first hunt or her first year hunting, and they just told her to do it, like, that's not on her, really, that's on them. So I don't know, it just,
well, I mean, even if it's not her first time hunting, and even if those guys weren't egging her on, if you want her to change her behavior, jumping down her throat's not the way to do it, especially not online. Like, that's just inappropriate behavior on both sides, I think.
Yeah. And, you know, I guess maybe there's some merit to that, and she'll be like, oh, crap, you know, a ton of people didn't agree with what I did. Like, I shouldn't do that again, or at least I shouldn't post that again. Yeah. But I don't know.
I think most of the time, people like that who get hate online end up doubling down on the situation. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if she goes back out and shoots another turkey at 80 yards or further and posts it again just to be spiteful.
I saw that literally today. A pretty big account had posted a dude holding a turkey's head that was removed from the body by the beak, and I mean, they too were just getting reamed. And I'm not gonna lie, I commented on that as well, but. Yeah, they doubled down on it hardcore. Yeah, just completely doubled down on it.
Well, and the algorithm breeds that, because the more comments and engagement you get, the higher that sits in the algorithm, the more engagement you're going to get. Your channel's going to get bigger, your page is going to get bigger, and so it reinforces that behavior of doubling down on things like that get hate.
I know. I got to thinking of that too. People were like, I'm surprised I haven't deleted it, and I was thinking the same thing. Like, they're probably loving this. Like, people will forget about it over time, and all it's doing is helping their channel grow. All these comments, like, and they're replying to them, doubling down. It's just feeding the algorithm. But crazy. Well,
overall, I have another question for you, because turkey season in Ohio is winding down. I think this weekend, the end of the season. We always seem to get it done early. Do you miss the days of hunting late season like this, when gobblers are hard to come by and the environment is more green and lush, and so it's difficult to see distances? Do you miss hunting in that environment sometimes?
That's why I travel. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've been blessed to have some good properties, and we're usually always done before May hits. But that hunt we had here 2 or 3 years ago with Corey, that was like May 10th, May 8th.
It was.
That was probably the latest we've hunted in Ohio in a while, and those are super fun. Especially, they're usually like really responsive too. Not necessarily vocally, but if you can get on one and he doesn't have hens, like, you're usually in for a good hunt. But I also was thinking today, like, again, this was a while ago, 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, but like, a lot of the properties we hunted this time of year, you'd see birds like really shifting around again. Like, down south, I'm not going to say the name, but like, we would not hear turkeys there for the first 2-3 weeks of the season, and then the last week they'd just be like everywhere.
Yeah,
so
we had some good hunts like that.
I think they're doing. I always think there's a big shift right before the season when they're kind of going into their their nesting breeding ranges, and I think there's kind of a shift again right now where a lot of the hens have. They're doing their thing on their nest for a lot of the day, and I think some of those toms really start bouncing around again.
They're unoccupied and looking for something else to do, so they just travel a little bit more.
Yep. It's weird how it just, again, changes year to year. We talked about where we both killed our turkeys this year, how they were roosting in different locations, and then also here this year. I've had turkeys here for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5.
Wow.
Yeah, for a handful of years, and they just were flat out not here this year. I don't, like, you could say crop rotation, but we've already, seen that cycle, so it can't be that. The habitat has not changed at all. If anything, it's changed for the better with some of the work we've done. So just weird, like how that can alter. I don't know, but I'm curious to see getting the hardwoods timbered out, what that'll do for the turkeys, because I strategically had him leave some like really good roost trees, some historic roost trees where we know they've roosted before. I wonder if opening that up they'll like, with the roost trees still being there, or if that'll, I know you talked about research. Mike put something out, I don't know, last month about how like one of the biggest threats to localized turkey flocks are like removing historic generational roost trees.
Sure.
Which I don't even necessarily think he meant through logging. I think like, straight up like demolition for builds and stuff like that.
Sure.
I mean, I guess logging could do it too, but I would hope most of the time select cuts are being made where there's still roost trees available. But yeah, I mean, that could be.
Now, I wonder why that is, because you'd think the turkey would just go somewhere else, but maybe they just, do they not travel far enough to find another good roost tree, and so they spend a night on the ground and get zapped? Like, how does that work? Why would that, that would, in my opinion, that would change my experience on a given property. If the roost trees are gone, the turkeys might disperse and go somewhere else, but why would that decrease the population number? I would love to know more about that.
Yeah, I don't know that he was saying it necessarily decreases the number, but I think
just in terms of habitat destruction, because the roost tree's gone.
Well, they need. He was talking about how they need. They need water and certain types of terrain and whatever. Like, so if there's a giant oak flat on this ridge with a creek below and good nesting habitat, and then you go and you demolish the roost trees on that property, like.
Sure.
They're going to move somewhere that maybe doesn't have the other 3 things that they also need or whatever. So
I was thinking about that because at home there's a resident turkey population there too, and I'm actually really hesitant to say this. there's a field behind our property that was just native grasses, CRP, probably some government program. And last year, about this time, around the end of turkey season, they disked it all up and planted beans back there. And this year, the turkeys have done things that I've never seen them do there before. And they're spending a lot more time in that field and on the opposite side of it than where our property actually sits. And I think it's because it was finally opened up to them. They actually had a reason to be there. And so that stuff changes too. You know, those government programs for CRP are they're time limited. They're not indefinite. So you have to do certain things to maintain them. And if someone lets it go after 10 years or whatever, it could change the way turkeys behave on your property in an instant. Well, and that specific situation, I don't think that it did, because I've tried to keep tabs on listening to the number of gobbling turkeys that I hear back there, but that could have opened up other hunters that didn't have an opportunity to hunt turkeys in the past to be able to go in there and just take out all the males.
Snowball effect.
Yeah.
Well, I think, I'm not a biologist, but CRP and turkeys too, I don't think really mix. You know, there was a trail cut around that entire CRP field, grass chest high. Like, that's a recipe for getting snatched up.
Yeah.
Like, so I think you're absolutely spot on that being removed and put into, is it planted in corn now this year?
They haven't disked it yet.
Haven't?
They just spread lime last week. Okay. So I'm assuming they're going to get ready to plant, and I have to imagine they're going to put corn back there because of crop rotations. I would be shocked if they put beans back in there, but who knows?
Yeah, you never know, but I'm sure that's why they were in there. I think, for sure. I don't know if that was good or bad for them. I know they hunt that, but I don't know, maybe they didn't get one this year.
Oh, well, from what I hear, it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Gotcha. Well, cool. It always goes by so quick. I feel like we didn't cover that much, but we still got to talk turkeys, which I'm thrilled about. So
yeah, there's always more to talk about too, because there's always new stuff happening.
There is. Yeah, we didn't really cover a whole lot about any of the hunts. I know we talked a little bit about Eli's hunt, which that video is already on our channel if you guys want to check that out. All the other hunts from this season, minus a couple that we didn't get on film, will be on the channel as well. So if you guys are into watching some of these turkey hunts unfold, we've traveled to a handful of different states and have footage in all of them. So if you guys want to check those out, go ahead, and then we'll be rolling right into some deer stuff coming up here as well. So we appreciate you guys listening to episode number 8, and we'll see you back here next time.